Hello, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to talk to you about a uncomfortable subject, one that I think is important that we all talk about. The subject I'm talking about is racism, and right there, I know that gets everybody uncomfortable, but it's a subject that I think is important to discuss, especially with today, because it seems while it went away for a little while, it seems to be making its way back into the media and back into our everyday lives. So, what I'm going to talk about is how racism is a social issue and it needs to be stopped, or at least we need to make the right steps towards it and towards keeping the right company around us. I'm going to talk about several people that you are familiar with, and we're going to talk about their methods, how they approached it. First one I'm going to talk about is Malcolm X. Now, Malcolm X had a fight back mentality, and it's not always the right approach. The Bible certainly doesn't condone violence. I don't condone violence, but I do like a little bit of what Malcolm X had to say. Uh, One thing he called it said, and in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever skin color there is, you are living at a time of extremism and a time of revolution. And when there's a time that it's got to be changed. Excuse me. And people have misused it, their power, and it must be stopped. And the only way to do that is with extreme methods. He goes on to say that he doesn't even call it violence. He calls it self-defense, and he calls it intelligence. And that's right up my alley. I'm a very big Second Amendment guy, and I can get behind the idea of self-defense. So let's look at the Bible. Psalm 82, chapter 4 says, deliver the poor and the needy, rid them of the hand of the wicked. And that's exactly what Malcolm X was doing. He was ridding a segregation, and there were blatant laws disregarding people due to the color of their skin. And that's exactly what he did. They were the needy, and the wicked were those in power at the time. That's who he was fighting back with. But like I said, violence is never a method. So we're going to go with Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm going to read this directly. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Dr. Martin Luther King's talking about us, inclusive, Americans, human beings everywhere. He's not dividing one from the other. He wants everybody to be inclusive. He goes on to say, the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for more convenient season. The time is now. If you recognize the issue, you have to call it. You have to see it, you got to talk about it, because otherwise we're going to be wrapped up in a timetable of just sweeping it under the rug. I want to talk about another story here. It's a story of a man named Michael Kent. He was a Nazi, and he was convicted of a crime, and then was put on parole. His parole officer was a female by the name of Tiffany Whittier, and she had quite an obstacle, quite a position that God put her in, and she could have handled it any number of ways. She could have been standoffish, she could have declined, but instead, no, she embraced God's challenge to her. And through the months of their parole, Michael Kent grew to see her as a human. Now he greets her with a hug and has had all of his swastika tattoos removed. That's a present day story. And it's hard to think present day. Just on Hitler's anniversary, my own hometown of Noonan, Georgia, was the host of white supremacy National Socialist movement. The town didn't rally behind. We rallied together, but it's very real, and it hits home. And visual aid I want you guys to take in today is the Holy Bible. God created man in his image. I want you to think about that. I want you to consider what that means. Do you treat every man or woman, or mankind, as if they are the image of God? If you approached every human being as if they resembled God and showed God's character in their ways, if you treated every human being as such, there would be a lot less violence. There would be a lot more love. And that's something I want people to take away from this. When you approach humans, your fellow man, your brothers and sisters, regardless of color and race, I want you to approach them as if they are the image of our Lord. And if we could spread that, we can have more situations like Michael Kent and Tiffany Whittier. I do appreciate your time, and if I could leave you with one thing, it would be reach out and love somebody. Thank you.